This week 13 Thursday night football player props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Bet Rivers. Claim your risk-free bet up to $500 over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betrivers. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betrivers. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Wednesday, November the 29th, currently 3:12 on the East Coast. Here to get into our Thursday night football player props between the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys. And joining me here to help me break it all down, you guys know him as a voice, of course, on the NBA Propcast and here on the NFL Propcast. I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappin. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
What's going on? Another NFL Thursday night football game, man. Hopefully we can the spread doesn't really indicate this one is going to be super close, but we know Dallas is, if you just look at where they are in their schedule right now, they are, about to face some tougher opponents. So we'll see if they're able to, cover all these spreads. They did just beat down my Commanders, and, when you're a Commanders fan, you just set the expectations super low so that way your Thanksgiving isn't ruined, and you just enjoy the food on Thanksgiving. But yeah, I'm excited as always to get into these games, and at least we have what I think is some pretty good offenses, even though both of these defenses are sneakily good as well. So excited to talk about it with you today. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Cowboys coming off of the Thanksgiving Day victory last Thursday against your Commanders, and they made quick work of it. But again, I think it's what you mentioned as well, Chris. It's that the Cowboys haven't played anyone impressive, over the and again, I know the counter argument always is, well, you play who's in front of you, right? And I think that for the Cowboys, like you mentioned, like the schedule gets a little bit tougher here, and I'm trying to pull up their exact schedule, what's kind of transpired for them over the season. And last week it was the Commanders, and then they faced teams like the Patriots, and they faced teams like the Jets, the Giants, the Rams, the Panthers. So now they're going to a stretch on their schedule here. So we're going to find out if the Cowboys are actually contenders or they're pretenders, because again, Seattle, they're a competitive team. I think we can probably say they're an average team, in the NFL, but then they have the Eagles come into town. They go to Buffalo, they go to Miami, and then they go and then they welcome Detroit before they wrap it up in Washington, or against Washington, I should say, in the last game of the regular season. So now we're going to get to the part of their schedule for the Cowboys where we'll find out what this team is really all about. And again, the losses that they did take was week 3 in that shocking loss in an upset victory for the Arizona Cardinals, and then they got stomped, I believe it was on Sunday Night Football, against the San Francisco 49ers. So now the competition is going to stiffen up a little bit here for the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, for the Seattle Seahawks last season, they did make the playoffs, where a lot of people were expecting that team to probably have a top 5 pick in the draft last season, but they defied all odds. Geno Smith had an incredible year for the Seattle Seahawks last year, and No, they've lost throughout the last 4 games. It's been against better competition. They lost to the San Francisco 49ers last week. They lost to the Rams the week before in LA. They beat the Commanders, and they took a drumming against the Baltimore Ravens. And I mean, I for the Seahawks team, I really don't know what to expect for them, Chris, from week in and week out. Was Geno Smith deserving of the contract that he got from Seattle? I think we can say based on his performance last year, yes. But this year, I think a lot of, especially myself, was expecting him to take a step back. And I think when we did our season-long preview of our player props, I did take Geno Smith under on his passing yards for the season. I need to get an update on how that's going. But, I mean, if you want to talk about the Cowboys and the Seahawks, man, I guess more of the conversation about Seahawks, but what have you seen about the Seahawks here that maybe has impressed you or hasn't impressed you about this team?
Hey, Munaf, real quick. So, if you write Geno off, he's not gonna write you back. Just so you know, okay, before we get started. But one of the greatest quotes we probably got from the NFL last season. But yeah, it's just been I think honestly just that regression. Like I think we're spot on when we did our season long previews and we were talking about the AFC division. A couple things jump out to me. First and foremost, the remarkable season he had last year. So we're bound to have some kind of regression, and that's why they were so good, because he, defied all odds last season, and he had a spectacular season with Metcalf and Lockett, and that offense was going, the defense was humming again. So you're bound to have a little bit of regression. We know that the consistency in the NFL is one of the hardest things to maintain. So I think that's a big part of it. I also think, looking at Seattle's, what was I going to say? I think maybe their offense, and going back to Geno, like we kind of just talked about, I don't think that, that was sustainable. Oh, I know what I was going to say. His contract. So his contract, and I think that you would agree with this, Munaf, is a lot of the times it's based on what have you done for me lately, right? And we see a lot of these quarterbacks. Tom Brady just came out and said that there's a bunch of mediocrity at the quarterback position in the NFL. So if you can find one that you can hold, kind of, hang on to. Imagine if Geno was having the season that he had last season, this season, that, without having the one last year. I mean, they'd probably be, all the teams would be trying to sign them. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But as time goes on, teams kind of study you. They figure you out as a whole, and then they kind of game plan for you. Offensive and defensive coordinators get paid millions of dollars to scout you and see what you do well and see what your flaws are as well. And then when they make the game plan, it's to expose those flaws. So I think a little bit of it has been, just a little bit of it all, honestly. But more so, I think the offense and the lack of scoring. They're not one of the teams that are scoring the ball, granted, given all the offensive weapons they have. So that's my quick analysis, I think.
Yeah, I think for the Seahawks, I mean, you mentioned, I think that their wide receiving group, when healthy, can be one of the best ones. I think top 10 for sure. Maybe some people may even want to put them in the top 5 as far as their wide receiving group goes. Led by DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then also they drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba last year in the draft. So, and again, this running game as well, right? You talk about Kenneth Walker. You also drafted Zach Charbonnet as well. So this team definitely has the offensive weapons. It's just about them, really putting it together. But again, last season, I don't think it was a fluke for the Seattle Seahawks, just because they do have the talent on both sides of the football. But I think this is definitely an interesting team, going forward, for the Seattle Seahawks team post the Russell Wilson era. All right, Chris, before we do get into our player props here for the Thursday night football game between the Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys, let me tell everyone about Bet Rivers. We're brought to you by Bet Rivers. Bet Rivers is available in over 14 states plus Ontario, Canada. Bet Rivers has some of the best live betting markets in the space. Their betting menu is second to none, including a ton of props. Depositing and withdrawing is super easy on Bet Rivers as well. So sign up using our link to get a risk-free bet up to $500. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betrivers. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betrivers. Problem gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Chris, let's get into our player props here for the Thursday night football game between the Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys. Why don't you lead us off, my man?
Let's do it. So we've been talking a little bit about Dallas's defense, and we also talked about Geno struggling. So this one, if you might actually enjoy this, you might find this a little bit of refreshing because of your season-long prop. But I'm taking Geno. No surprise here. I'm going under on his passing yards. The number is 222 and a half, I want to say. It's a tad bit juice, so you can shop around. But this is really just correlated well with that Dallas defense. And we know that they've been one of the best passing defenses in the league. And although Geno did go over in every other game so far this season, I think that this is the spot where he probably goes under in. So looking at the opposing quarterbacks so far this season, well, let's start with the spread. So the spread, we talked about it being, multiple possessions. To me, that kind of indicates that they will be passing, probably a tad bit more. Seattle already doesn't rush the ball a lot, but the Cowboys defense has been excellent versus the pass. Only one of the 5 opponents that they have faced in the last 5 weeks have actually thrown for more than 223 yards. And they've only given up 223 yards this season or more, just 3 times out of 12 games. So that, that's a pretty big sample size so far this season. I know Dallas is coming off a really, really big win, but they kind of have it going right now, against these lesser opponents. This isn't, the Philadelphia Eagles. This isn't the San Francisco 49ers, the teams that they've lost to already this season. So I think that they can hold Geno under as well. I think, looking at Geno, one of the first things I wanted to do was take his pass attempts under. But then I'm like, that don't really make a lot of sense. So I expect Seattle to be able to try to control the pace of this game, probably run it just a tad bit more, even though I don't know how successful they're going to be there either. But I like Geno to go under on his passing yards, especially in a Thursday night football game where we typically play a lot of overs and then we, end up dying on the hook or whatever the case might be. So before I got it, was requesting some unders a couple weeks ago. Hopefully he's listening to this one and he can bet this under with us and make some cash with Geno to go under 225 and under 222 and a half passing yards.
I mean, you take a look at the quarterbacks that have gone over this number, right? It was Brock Purdy on that Sunday night football game, like I mentioned, but that offense is just on an elite level. It's the 49ers, and then we know the 49ers pretty much dominate against the Dallas Cowboys over the past several seasons. And then the only other one, or the 2 other one with Justin Herbert, he barely got over this number at 227. And last week, I mean, just going off a game script, what was going on last week, the Commanders were just forced to throw the football with Sam Howell, and we know Sam Howell likes to fling the football all over the field. He leads the league in passing yards. And again, a lot of that is because the Commanders are trailing in the game a lot. But if we know anything about Pete Carroll, he likes to establish the run, right? I'm not sure if Kenneth Walker is going to be playing in this game or not, but look for Zach Charbonnet to get most of the bulk of the carries here. He has been over the last 2 weeks for the Seattle Seahawks. So, yeah, I think that defensively this team can step up as well. I think we'd be remiss also not to mention the 11-1 winner that Rod gave out last week for the Thanksgiving Day games, where Deron Bland intercepted the football. Not only did he intercept it, but he also ran it back for a pick six. I think that he did break the record, the NFL record for pick sixes last week on the Thanksgiving Day games against the Commanders. So I mean, we're trying to give out unders. We're also giving out huge long shot odds prop bets that are cashing here as well at 11-1. So yeah, I like to call on Geno here in this game against the Cowboys. I'm also looking at Geno here, Chris, but I'm looking at his rushing yards to go over in this game. It's at 9.5. I thought the number was really conservative for Geno Smith. Number one, I think that if his pass rush is able to get to Geno Smith, he hasn't been afraid to utilize his legs this season, right? So I know he hasn't done it a lot, but when he needs to, he does it. So last week against the San Francisco 49ers, he had 4 attempts for 21 yards. Against the Commanders, he went 1 for 13. Against the Cardinals, 6 for 10. Against the Bengals, 4 for 20. Against the Detroit Lions, 3 for 20. So it's not like he hasn't done it this season. And then you take a look at what opposing quarterbacks have done against the Cowboys as far as rushing the football. First 3 weeks of this regular season, Daniel Jones, 13 of 43. Zach Wilson, 5 for 36. Josh Dobbs, 6 for 77. Justin Herbert went 6 for 20. Jalen Hurts, we know, a scrambling quarterback, 10 for 36. Even Tommy DeVito, 7 for 41. And then even Sam Howell last week. I gave out Sam Howell over on his rushing yards. I believe that number was 13.5, and I got hooked on that. So asking him to get 10 rushing yards here, I don't think is a big deal for Geno Smith. Like I mentioned, he's done it, several times this season. And again, more quarterbacks have done it than not against the Cowboys this season. So if that pass rush led by Micah Parsons able to get to him, I expect Geno Smith to utilize his legs and at least get, a couple of attempts here. I think definitely he will get over this number of 9.5 rushing yards here, Chris.
Yeah, I looked at this one as well. If it was my probably honorable mention as far as a second quarterback prop, because it's because of what you said, and I like the handicap last week. It's the same. It's pretty much the same as what you were saying about Sam Howell. It's that pass defense. You expect them if game script goes the way we think it'll go, then Dallas will be winning. Geno will have to be throwing the ball just a tad bit more, specifically in the second half. And if that rush gets to him with Micah Parsons and those other linebackers, trying to get after him, he'll be forced to run the ball just a tad bit more. When I was looking at this, he didn't have the most attempts, but you think about game script and how they'll deviate from the pass, and I would only be able to play him over. I think 9.5 is a tad bit too conservative, and I'd be scared, watching this game thinking that Geno couldn't go out there and get 10 yards with his feet in this one, So I like the number as well at 9.5. I would only play the over.
Perfect. All right, Chris, take us to your next player prop, man. What do we got?
So I know you just kind of mentioned them, Zach. Cabernet. I'm also. I talked about Geno going under. I'm taking the under here as well. This one is a maybe a little bit more risky because I think, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Kenneth Walker probably will not suit up in this game. The last time I checked, I think it's an oblique injury that he was dealing with, and he did not practice yesterday because today's Wednesday. He did not practice yesterday as well, so it doesn't look like he's probably going to play in this game, which will mean that there'll be more carries for Zach in this game. But so this for me the game script for the Cowboys, who, like I said, we talked about this already. They have a very, very good passing defense, but the reason that they are able to do that is because they've been doing a pretty good job of shutting down the run as well and forcing you into those situations where you actually have to pass the football. So, this one, when you look at the handicap, of course, he's under in 9 of his last 10, but that's also with Kenneth Gainwell being back there and them kind of splitting the carries. So understanding that he will get majority of the carries if and when Kenneth Gainwell is ruled out, we will probably see this number tick up just a tad bit when Kenneth Gainwell is ruled out. So if you want to wait on this one, could not talk you off, but I think that, Seattle, looking at their numbers as well, another part of this handicap was they're not really rushing the ball that often. I want to say they were bottom 10 in rushes, bottom 10 in rushing yards per game as well, specifically over their last few. And I think the Cowboys understand the game script of, Seattle trying to give him the ball so that they can establish the run and then potentially open it up. Because a team that's going to beat Dallas, I think you would agree with this, a team that's going to beat Dallas and really compete with them is going to be a well-balanced team, right? A team that can run the ball on first down, maybe get some play action in there on second down so that they can kind of throw you off and, not have you knowing what's coming next. When Dallas can just sit back there, pin their ears back and know that they can rush the passer, doesn't really bode well for the opposing team. Prime example, Exhibit A, which would be Sam Howell last week against them. And Dallas just plays a little bit better at home as well, in their dome, where they're comfortable. So I like Zach to go under. The number is 48.5 right now, but like I said, you can wait because if Kenneth Gainwell is ruled out, then the number will tick up just a tad bit. But I think they can slow him down here enough and keep him under. I'm just asking him to stay under 50 yards here.
3.78 yards per carry is what the Cowboys are allowing to the running back position this season. That ranks top 7, top 6 here for the Dallas Cowboys. And I think I don't think Kenneth Walker will end up playing in this game. Number one, because like you mentioned that he is dealing with that injury. It is a short week for them as well. Last week, he only had 4 carries for 18 yards. And again, he probably did leave that game with an injury. But, for Zach Charbonnet, I haven't been really impressed about what he's been able to do over the past couple of weeks as well, right? I mean, his yards per carry haven't been there over 3 out of the last 4 games. So I'm going to throw the Baltimore game out the window. I mean, he only had 4 carries for 8 yards, but we know that team is a really good defensive front. A lot of people are having success against Washington. We're not going to talk about that. But against the Rams, he was only 15 of 47. And then the San Francisco 49ers, 14 of 47 as well. So when we talk about teams that are good against the run, like I mentioned, he faced the Niners second best team against the run, right? I just feel like this is going to be a game where it might just be a typical primetime game that we've seen this season, where it's going to be ugly. Yards are going to be at a premium. Points are going to be at a premium. I know Dallas is undefeated at home this season, so I just think that, if it comes to a point that this turns into a blowout for the Dallas Cowboys, that we may see Drew Lock comes in and they're gonna have to throw the football around. So yeah, I mean, I definitely could get behind this. Again, it's just the fact that I believe in this Dallas front seven. At least their rush defense has been really good so far this season.
Yeah, and then just to add some numbers to that as well. If I my notes are pulled up now. Looking at Seattle, you talked about how good their rush defense was. Looking at Seattle's offense, they're only getting 4.1 yards per carry, which ranks bottom 10. They're only running the ball 23 times per game, which is the second fewest in the league, and they're only getting 95.8 rushing yards per game, which is also bottom 6 as well. So all of those reasons, I'd be okay with. You can wait, like I said, to see if it ticks up just a tad bit, which it should if Kenneth Gainwell is ruled out. But I would come back in on the under here with Zach Cabernet.
Yeah, 100%. All right, before we get over to my next player prop for this Thursday night football game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys, let me tell everyone about PrizePicks. Look, PrizePicks, they're a daily fantasy sports website where you can get down on playing alongside some of your favorite fantasy players. And again, on PrizePicks, they're very unique because they give you the opportunity to combine fantasy players combos. So for example, since the basketball season's here, and I'll use that as an example, college basketball here and the NBA well underway, you can now pick the combo projections across football and basketball from the specials leagues tab. So this is a special league that was created specifically for combo projections, like I mentioned. So that includes 2 or more players from different sports. So it could be from the NFL, it could be from the NBA. So just for an example, let's say you want to get down on LeBron James and Travis Kelce on a combo at a number of 10.5. And that combination is 3-pointers made by LeBron and receptions for Mr. Travis Swift, I'll call him, for over on PrizePicks. So you can do that, and that's some of the great things about PrizePicks. So again, you can play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz. You can also find this in the Community Plays tab, in the Promos tab under the app. So again, just go to Community Plays under the Promos tab, and you'll be able to find the entries for some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community every single week. Plus, PrizePicks offers a reboot policy. So what the hell is a reboot policy? Reboot policy means that if your player gets injured in the first half of the game, regardless of the sport, so if it's a football game, whether it's an NBA game, that player gets injured in the first half and they don't return in the second half, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. We'll put together a PrizePicks at the entry for this Thursday night football game at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. But all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and make sure you use that promo code SGPN for your first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/SGPN. Use that promo code SGPN. You'll get your first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, a sports betting research analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bet's revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, Chris, let me get over to my next player prop for this Thursday night football game. I'm going to go over to the Dallas Cowboys side. We're talking about running backs. I'm looking at Tony Pollard in this game. I'm looking at the over 19.5 receiving yards for Tony Pollard. And let's start here with the Seattle Seahawks defense against the running back position as far as through the air, right? They're allowing the 5th most receiving yards to the running back position this season at around close to 42 receiving yards per game. They're also allowing an average of, let's see here, 5.27, so about 5 receptions per game. And they also are giving up the targets as well, which was around 7 for the Seattle Seahawks defense against the tight end position. Now we take a look at Tony Pollard, and he's starting to, I guess, look like the running back that the Dallas Cowboys were expecting him to be coming into the season, especially after letting Zeke go. But we know that we've seen Tony Pollard just be an absolute menace through the passing game, right? Early on in the season, he wasn't getting really involved, but over the last couple of weeks here, he's seen a total of 11 targets through the passing game, and he's turned those 11 targets into 10 receptions and a total of 43 receiving yards. Last week against the Commanders, he was able to do that. He got 24 receiving yards. Against the Carolina Panthers, he got hooked on that receiving yard number, which was at 19, but he had 80 against the Chargers, 35 against the 49ers, 37 early in the season against the New York Jets. And if you take a look at also what running backs have done through the passing game against the Seahawks in particular, trying to pull up the numbers here against the Seahawks through the passing game. So last week, Christian McCaffrey, 5 receptions, 25 yards. The week before, Dale Henderson Jr., before he got cut by the Rams, against the Seahawks, had 4 receptions for 28 yards. The Ravens weren't able to get there, but even the Browns and their passing game, Pierre Strong, one of their running backs, had a 41-yard reception. Going back to the Bengals, Joe Mixon, 3 for 24. Let's see, Matt Breida, even when he was filling in for the Saquon Barkley when he was injured, had 5 receptions for 48 yards. Miles Sanders, 5 for 38. Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that we've talked a lot about on this Propcast, 7 for 39. So I think Tony Pollard definitely fits those mold of those running backs, especially pass catching running backs. So I think 19.5, I think is definitely doable here for Tony Pollard. I think he'd get this done in maybe 2 or 3 targets. Again, he has that breakout ability. We've seen it multiple times throughout his career. I like this number of 19.5 over on Tony Pollard here, receiving yards here, Chris.
Yeah, I like him. I like it just because I know a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, me and you talked about, I talked about liking Tony Pollard, and we talked about him like not really breaking out and living up to expectation like we thought he would. It does feel like more recently they've been giving him the ball just a tad bit more, both like rushing the ball, his numbers are up, and receiving the ball, just his targets in general. Both of those numbers are up over the last couple of weeks, going back to the Arizona game. And I think that may have been when we were on him. I think I might have taken his anytime touchdown in that game. But yeah, carries are up, 23, 25, 14. Receptions and targets are up as well. And the other thing about Tony Pollard in this spot as well, is he's actually catching the ball every single time pretty much. It's not a lot of wasted attempts. So, it's not like he's dropping passes and, kind of fumbling them away. So I like this number for Tony Pollard as well. This is I think it's a pretty buy low spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, this number seemed a little conservative to me at 19.5. So I think it's a great buy low spot. All right, Chris, take us over to player prop number 3, man. What do we got?
So we're going back to a kicker. Haven't played a kicker but once this year. We're going with Jason Myers. I actually like Jason Myers a tad bit more than the Dallas kicker in this spot. So his kicking points right now, 5.5 at some shops. It's juiced at 5.5, like around minus 130. You can take 6.5. I think the 6.5 is probably pretty good money as well. But we do know the difference is between 5.5 and 6.5 is that field goal. So 2 field goals will get it done for you, but you take that, that 6.5, you need 3 field goals or 2 touchdowns and a field goal. So just whichever one you want to delay the juice is fine. When I was looking into this one, this was stood out to me. First of all, looking at the Dallas side, Dallas, and this is not the great part of the cap that's going to make you want to back it, but Dallas is actually doing really, really well. They haven't really given up a bunch of kicking points throughout the season. Honestly, I want to say they've gone under, like opposing teams have gone under in like 5 of their last 6 games, and it's not a lot of times that teams have actually gone over this number. However, looking at the opposite side, Jason Myers is playing in the dome, so no weather concerns. There's always something I'm looking at when I'm capping these. And we expect Dallas defense to bend but not break in this spot. So even if Seattle moves the ball down the field, which I'm hoping that they will at some capacity, their team total is 18.5 right now. I think they'll step up in the defense in the red zone. The defense will step up. So I went in and looked at the Dallas defense specifically in the red zone. Dallas actually ranked 6th in opponent touchdown scoring percentage in the red zone at about 40%, which means that 60% of the time they turnover on downs or teams are kicking field goals. So I love all of that. You go back and just look at Jason Myers in general. Like, this dude has been killing it. 3 straight overs on his 5.5. And he's actually gone over in 10 of the 11 games so far that he's played. So he's having no trouble at all, getting points, whether it's extra points, whether it's, converting field goals. We just need Seattle's offense to be able to put them in, good scoring position, and then to not score, which is what Dallas typically makes you do. So give me Jason Myers in this spot. If I won't be the dead horse, over 5.5, I think the 6.5 is okay as well. Kicking points here in this spot.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the number one. That's the thing that stuck out to me is that he's done this in 10 of the 11 games thus far this season for the Seattle Seahawks. And again, like you mentioned as well, the weather is not going to be a factor in this game. So if the Dallas defense is able to, step up in the red zone, like you mentioned, that they have been all season, I think there's an opportunity for Jason Myers to get over this projection of 5.5 or 6.5 if you want to pay a little bit less big on it. But I think for Pete Carroll, I think he's more of a conservative coach, where I think that he'll get his opportunities, that if he's able to get points, especially early in the game, I think he'll take that opportunity. Again, like I mentioned, we've seen these primetime games just been going under the total, all throughout the season. So I think that if it is going to be a lower scoring game, if there are points to be had, it'll probably be via the field goal, whether it's with, Jason Myers or, whether it's with the Dallas kicker. So yeah, I can't argue against it, especially for a guy that's gone over this number in 10 of the 11 games thus far this season. All right. For my third player prop here, I'm going to go back to Dak, and I think Dak throws an interception in this game here, Chris. That number is around -110, -115 for Dak Prescott to throw an interception. And you take a look, and I know this may be a little historical, but because Dak Prescott hasn't played the Seahawks since the 2020 season, but he's had 3 career games against the Seattle Seahawks. I know we talked about the Legion of Boom and all that, that regime before they were, either got traded or signed with their teams or just broke up. But he's had at least 2 interceptions in each of the 3 career games against the Seattle Seahawks. And again, like I mentioned, it's 2017, 2018, and 2020. But we also take a look at the regular season. I know he's only throwing 2 interceptions in his last 5 games. But I think that when you take a look at the secondary and when it is healthy, like it is right now for the Seattle Seahawks team, they will take advantage, and they have ball hawking guys on that defensive side of the football. So they have at least intercepted a pass in back-to-back weeks against Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy. They picked off, I believe it was, PJ Walker, 2 interceptions. They got one off of Joe Burrow. They got 2 off of Daniel Jones. They were able to get one off of Jared Goff. So I think that, again, if this team wants to stay in this game and stay within the number of 8.5 right now, Chris, I think it's going to have to start on the defensive side of the football. They're going to have to create some type of turnovers. And hopefully that is an interception that's going to be thrown by Dak Prescott in this game. So I'm gonna go Dak Prescott to throw a interception. That's around -110, -115. Definitely shop around for the best number. But currently over on Bet Rivers, that is currently at, let me see here, -107. So even better over on Bet Rivers right now. Dak to throw an interception, -107 in this game against the Seahawks here, Chris.
Yeah, is that I just think about when, they're not even really handicapping it or looking at the numbers. If I think about it's the time of the year for Dak, right? The year
Yeah.
it's getting towards that time of the season where Dak starts to make a few more mistakes, and maybe the defense forces them into a couple bad plays. Maybe, I mean, interceptions are so quarterbacks are so prone to throw interceptions, not even from the defense's perspective, but more so just from their guys. So, tip pass, goes the wrong way. Maybe that is something that leads to, a field goal for Jason Myers in this spot, so hopefully they can get some good field position. I like it. Give me Dak to throw at least one as well.
There you go. All right, Chris, any honorable mentions we want to throw out there?
Not really. I think I just kind of focused in on these ones. So not anything else that I've really stood out to me at all. I know some wide receivers that's been playing pretty good for the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson's been doing pretty good, but I didn't play any of those guys.
All right. I was actually tempted by CeeDee's under. I think I saw a note of that wide receiver ones have not been doing very well against the Seattle Seahawks defense. I'm going to dig a little more, and I'll try to tweet that out. But I think I can see this going two ways, where this game turns into a blowout and the guys are sitting, and either that, I think the more likely scenario is, because of these primetime games, is that it's just a rock fight and both of these defense step up and it turns out to be a 17-9 type of final in this game. And I'm giving 9 points to the Seattle Seahawks there, so that gets you over your kicking points for Jason Myers. So that was the only one that I was considering in this game. But other than that, yeah, nothing else really stood out to me. All right, Chris, let's get over to our touchdown scores in this game here. Anything that stood out to you as far as touchdown scores?
Yeah, so I think Tony Pollard, if he's been the guy that's been getting in the end zone as of late, and I don't see a reason that I know you talked about him when you talked about his receiving yards, and maybe he takes one of those receptions into the end zone. But Tony Pollard, I know he hasn't scored. He didn't score in the last couple weeks. Well, he did score in the last couple weeks. He got back-to-back weeks where he has a touchdown. I think we cashed on him in the Carolina game. But yeah, I like Pollard to kind of keep it going. He gets a favorable matchup. Seattle is allowing 1.3 rushing touchdowns per game, which actually is the fifth most. So that the defense kind of breaks when it gets down to the red zone. And I think that Dallas should utilize him when they get close down to the red zone as well. He's not really splitting carries, too much. And the Cowboys are projected to score 28.5 points here. That's 4 touchdowns. I need Pollard to get at least one, and maybe sprinkle on his double touchdown as well. I got to look up those odds. But yeah, I like Tony Pollard probably a little bit more than anybody else in this spot. What do you think?
Yeah, again, I like his receiving yards over, so I think that he's able to find the end zone in this game here. So, yeah, I definitely do like Tony Pollard. If you want to sprinkle on the first touchdown score of the game, that's around plus 450. He is actually the favorite to score the first touchdown for the game overall. A couple guys that I was looking at, I think Jake Ferguson intrigues me, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. He's around plus 170. I know he's been involved in the passing game over the past couple weeks here, and I know traditionally the Seahawks give it up to the tight end position, but I think he could be a sneaky look, especially if they get into the red zone. So I do like that plus 170 for Jake Ferguson of the tight end of the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's funny. I see the Dallas Cowboys defense to score a touchdown is at 3-1 just because of the pick sixes that Deron Bland has gotten. I thought that was pretty funny, but I'll throw a longer shot out there for the Seahawks. Noah Fant find the end zone here, 5-1. I don't hate that at that number. I think he could be a sneaky look here as well. So I'll throw those couple guys out. The rest of them ones are pretty chalky. I mean, CeeDee Lamb minus 145, Zach Charbonnet is at plus 120. DK plus 195, but yeah, I think those were the two. Nothing really jumped out to. I think again, when we talk about these primetime games, it's probably going to be another rock fight here. So yeah. All right. Chris, let's get into best bets here for this Thursday night football game here, my man. I'll let you lead off. What's your best bet?
We're going back to the top, man. Geno Smith under 222 and a half passing yards. Shop around for the best number. But like you said, we expect another rock fight of a primetime game. Dallas is really good defensively recently. And only 3 of the 12 quarterbacks that they faced so far this season have actually thrown for more than 223 yards, with one of those being a consolation of Sam Howell, who had to last week. I think any of the listeners could have threw for 225 yards last week, given how many attempts he had. Such a pathetic showing by my Commanders. But yeah, I digress. Give me Geno under on his passing yards here on Thursday Night Football.
Love it. All right, for my best bet, let's go Geno over the rushing yards. I think this number is a little conservative here at 9.5. I think that again, like I mentioned, he's done it plenty of times this season. Opposing quarterbacks have been doing this more times than not against the Dallas Cowboys, and against that pass rush is able to get there or get home to Geno Smith and force him out of the pocket. I think that he can utilize his legs here and get get some rushing yards here. Asking him to get over 9.5, I don't think it's a huge deal here for Geno Smith. So Geno Smith over 9.5 rushing yards in this game as my best bet. And Chris, before we get out of here, we'll put together our PrizePicks entry for this game between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. So I'll put our best bets in there. We'll go Geno less than, and this one's at 226.5 over on PrizePicks on his passing yards, and then his rush yards is at 9.5. So I'll take the more than on that. And I really like your Jason Myers look. It's at 6 right now over on PrizePicks. So we'll go higher on Jason Myers here for more than 6 kicking points. So that power play, if you played 3 for 3, will get you a nice $500 payout if you put a $100 entry in, or if you want to do a $50 entry, obviously that will get you $250. So we're going to go with Geno Smith less than 226.5 passing yards, Geno Smith more than 9.5 rushing yards, and Jason Myers more than 6 kicking points in this game. That entry will get you around $100 entry will get you $500. Again, make sure to go to PrizePicks.com. Use our promo code SGPN. It'll match your first deposit up to $100. And come join us and make a little cash over on PrizePicks.com. All right, Chris, that's going to do it for this edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Nah, that's it, man. Enjoy the game. Hopefully we get a good one. Hopefully it's a little bit closer than the spread indicates. I need Jason Myers to get a couple field goals in there. I need it to be a low-scoring game so Geno doesn't go under his passing yards. Also, same thing for Zach. I need him to go under his rushing yards. So I need just a boring snooze fest of a game with some really good defense from the Cowboys here, is what I need. I think that'll solidify all my bets. So yeah, enjoy the game as always. Bet responsibly, and definitely. Leave us a positive review over on Sports Gambling Podcast Network as well when you guys are finished listening to the pod. Best of luck to everybody tonight. We'll be back here soon to do the props for the weekend as well.
Yeah, 100%. We'll be back probably around Friday for the NFL Week 13 Sunday games, player props, and also me and Chris will be doing the NBA Propcast on Friday as well. So look out for us then. You can follow Chris on Twitter at ChrisBeCappin, 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. Like Chris mentioned, do us a favor, leave us a rating and review if you are making money with us, or if you just like us, leave us a 5-star review, hopefully with a nice comment in there as well. All right, we'll talk to you guys later this week. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.